Welcome back to the Susan LoPresti Wellness, Mind, Body, and Soul podcast, the podcast dedicated to helping you heal, rejuvenate, and truly thrive in every stage of life. Today's episode is one that will gently challenge the way you think about longevity, health, and what it really means to age. Most conversations around longevity focus on supplements, routines, or the latest breakthrough trend. But my guest today, Dr. Yi Sung, invites us to look at a much deeper and often overlooked question. What if the way we treat symptoms, even with advanced technology, is actually shortening our health span? Dr. Yi Sung is a Western-trained pathologist with a remarkable lineage coming from 17 generations of Chinese medicine practitioners. She brings together the wisdom of ancient healing with first-hand experience in cutting-edge regenerative therapies that most physicians never encounter. But this conversation isn't about hype. It's not about miracle cures or trendy stem cell promises. It's about understanding where modern medicine begins to fall short, why symptom-based care has become the norm, and what truly creates lasting health when we shift toward early, meaningful prevention. If you ever felt that there must be more to longevity than just biohacks and quick fixes, this episode is going to open your eyes in a very powerful way. So let's dive in. Dr. Yi Sung, welcome to the podcast. Dr. Sung, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to have you on and to get into this powerful conversation with you.
I am so happy to be here. I always like sharing my philosophy, my approach, and the new ideas I have.
Wow, and I love that. I love new ideas. Let's start with your background because it really is very unique. Can you share your journey from Western pathology into the world of Chinese medicine and regenerative therapies as well?
Sure. So I came from China. I grew up in Beijing. My family has 17 generations practicing Chinese medicine. So I was influenced by the medicine philosophy and approaches in my early ages. But I did not really think at that time I wanted to pursue traditional Chinese medicine approach. So I was still thinking Western medicine has more advanced technology, has more advanced knowledge about cellular interaction, molecules. So that's why I actually studied molecular biology and then came to United States to study pathology because I thought if I can study the mechanism of the disease, I can solve the fundamental issues why people get sick, and then we can prevent the degenerative conditions associated with aging. But then after I studied pathology for 5 years, I realized that was not going to be the solution to help people from suffering from degenerative conditions. Then I started go back to my traditional Chinese medicine influence from my family, and I started the holistic clinic in Boston 20 years ago. And in the past 20 years, when I was practicing Chinese medicine, holistic approaches to help people live healthier longer and also help a lot of people with acute conditions or chronic pain or even fertility problems, I actually realized that acupuncture or Chinese medicine or many modalities, they all have their own places, but they also have limitations. So a good example would be for my mother. And about 5 years ago, she had been suffering for with some kind of condition in her lower leg for a few years, and we tried many different things trying to resolve it. And of course, we knew at that time there was no effective treatment for that in Western medicine, because I already knew other people who did Western medicine treatment for that similar condition and didn't work for them, and then they had to have amputation eventually. So that's how I started looking to stem cells. But it was not because I was looking for stem cell treatment. It was only because I already had the retreat center in Colombia, and I was introduced into a lab in Colombia growing stem cells, and they offer stem cells for people to use in clinical application. And I visited the lab for a few times and looking at how they grow the cells, how they make sure their cells are not contaminated, and do the stringent tests. So I said, okay, let's try this, because I studied what the research has been done about mesenchymal stem cells from umbilical cord, and it showed that it's really excellent in reducing inflammation. And what my mom had in her leg was inflammation. So I just say, let's try it, see whether it can reduce the inflammation, because once the inflammation is reduced, she will feel better with less pain and will be able to walk better. So we tried it in 2021, and within a month, her inflammation was 90% gone. So that's how it prompted me to think that using this type of regenerative medicine, or combining with a lot of other holistic approaches and modalities, it's actually a very good option for a lot of people suffering from chronic inflammation.
Yes, absolutely. Now, so I know that there's a lot of clinics and things popping up with stem cell therapy. How do you know where to go and what's legit and what isn't? Is there any guidelines that someone who's listening and has some kind of a chronic condition that's not getting better, and they've heard about stem cell therapy but don't know too much? What advice would you give someone who's considering such a thing?
Yes, it's a very complicated question to answer,
I'm sure.
because just yesterday, if you guys are following, if any of your listeners or even you are following any YouTube channels, there's this investigational journalist. His name is Scott Carney, and he has been publishing videos talking about mainly grifters, not just in regenerative medicine, but also in supplements, in different things. But yesterday, the episode was mainly about stem cells, exosomes, peptides. So it's all trendy words and trendy treatments people are looking for, and none of them are approved by FDA. And so it is very difficult for general consumer to really know what is real, what is hip, right? You
Yes.
don't know which one it is, and you don't know whether this one is legit or not legit, because a lot of them have really fancy glass veneer building, and some of them, actually, a lot of them have like a really medical doctors talking about it. So it's very difficult to see, is it really real? And also, for most people, they also don't have the knowledge to really understand things completely. So far, I've been doing this for 5 years, and I come across so many people that they still cannot understand what's the difference between exosome and stem cells. And they don't even, some people, they even equal platelet-rich plasma with stem cells. So it's just, there are so many different nuances.
Yeah.
But the main thing is, if you really are confused and you don't know whom to listen to, some people say it's really bad, some people say it's really great. Which one is true? Basically, you need to find somebody who's really genuinely sincere about your health, not just for the sake of making money out of you, that really
Yes.
educate yourself. I think that's the only way.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So you ask a very powerful question. Why treating symptoms, even with advanced technology, can shorten a person's health span? Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, so like our conventional Western medicine system is set up in a way to treat the symptoms when they arise.
Yeah.
because even like the past 10 years, we started talking about functional medicine or other early prevention programs to help people get healthier. The the approaches, the fundamental approaches in Western medicine is still to treat the symptoms. Even though you do the blood test to see whether you have any imbalance, and then they want to adjust with nutrition or supplements, that's still looking into your blood test, not really looking into the person before even blood test shows anything. So that's the advantage or even the uniqueness in Chinese medicine approaches versus Western medicine approaches. Because in Chinese medicine, we don't look at the person only when they have symptoms. A lot of times you can already tell there's certain imbalance in the person, and then that they don't even have any symptoms yet, or they have very minor symptoms. So it would be something like most people don't even think they need to do anything to adjust. But in that kind of really early stage, if you recognize your body's imbalance or even your inherent weakness or strength when you were born, you inherited from your parents, then you can actually address your weakness and also the excess so that you make the balance is better and your body is in better harmony. Then that's how you can prevent a lot of chronic conditions from accumulating over the years.
So, what would be some inconspicuous symptoms that maybe show up and we dismiss them as not being important, but actually it's a clue to something that's going on in your body?
Yeah, so one good example would be if somebody has some minor digestive issues. Say sometimes they would have a little bit indigestion or bloating, but it's not every day, it's not constant. And sometimes they may have certain bowel movement issues. But a lot of times people just think, oh, that's nothing. Let me just take maybe some enzymes or take some laxative or something. Then they just don't pay attention to it. But that actually reflects certain weakness or some underlying condition that's going on in the body. And then a good example would be myself, because I was born with digestive system weakness, but I don't have any digestive system weakness right now. I don't have any symptoms. But back when I was in my 20s, I did have some minor symptoms. And that's when actually I started addressing my digestive system weakness. And that's why even up till now, I don't have any symptoms because I know my body's type, I know my body's constitution, and I addressed it very early.
And how do you address your particular symptoms? What is it that you do to keep yourself in check, let's say?
Okay. My example would be I was in my 20s. I was just like any young people. I was trying to work very hard, not paying attention to the time I eat and what I ate. So I was having some bloating, some indigestion. Plus, because when I had digestive system weakness since birth, and I accumulated some dampness and heat in my body. So I would have skin conditions like acne. And also, since I was born, I also had on and off eczema. So those things, how I addressed my digestive system weakness was I also took some herbal formulas to strengthen my digestive system. And also, I addressed the accumulation of the dampness and heat in my body so that I help my skin with those formulas. And also, I paid attention to my lifestyle. So I started eating more on time, and also I don't eat a lot of cold food, cold drinks, because that's not good for somebody with digestive system weakness. So just many small things you have to do over a long period of time. Any treatments that worked for a particular body type you need to do it consistently.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that because you're practicing Chinese medicine, you know about that. But if I went to a regular conventional doctor with your complaints, they would not be addressing the treatments that you were talking about at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the difference between Chinese
Yeah.
medicine approach versus Western medicine approach. And that's exactly why I became disenchanted with Western medicine and pathology and any regular conventional Western treatment, because they don't look at these minor things and try to remind people that you need to start paying attention. Or even a very simple example would be when people have shoulder pain or knee pain, and they don't really think it's something major. They think, oh, I just take some painkillers and rest, maybe it will get better. But ever since I started my clinic in Boston, I started telling people shoulder pain is something you should never ignore if you are over age 40, because that is a very common area where you would start having pain as a sign of aging. And it is talked about in Chinese medicine for thousands of years. And they even have a name for it, called it 50s shoulder problem for people in their 50s mostly. But of course, some people, they would start having it earlier, because when we age, one of the 12 channels in your body that help support the muscle, the joint, that channel's energy declines significantly when you reach age 40 or 50. So that's why, and the shoulder is the area that's very vulnerable to a lot of minor injuries. And then when they accumulate, that's how people start having shoulder pain. And if you don't pay attention, it becomes frozen shoulder. So if you have minor shoulder pain, you go to your traditional Western medicine doctors or even orthopedic doctors, they just tell you to take painkiller and rest or use ice or do some physical therapy. They don't really tell you to pay attention to this minor symptoms.
Yes. So it's interesting you bring up frozen shoulder because when I was in perimenopause, I woke up one day and I went into the kitchen to reach for a cup in my cupboard and I couldn't lift my arms. So they could go out like this, but I could not go this way.
Yep.
And that stayed with me for a good 6 to 8 months. And
Yep.
very recently, I had someone on my podcast who mentioned something about frozen shoulder. And she said that it's very common for a woman in perimenopause or menopause to get frozen shoulder. Now, when I went
Exactly.
to my doctor, he told me that I need to rest and put ice. And I said, but I did not do anything. I woke up like this one morning, but it did eventually go away. So that's so interesting.
Yeah, so did you do anything to make it go away? Because for some people, after 6 months, 8 months, they can heal themselves without any problem. But for certain amount of people, certain percentage of people, it can develop into frozen shoulder and then it can last for years. And then some of them eventually, their orthopedic doctors will tell them to do surgeries. And then some of them, maybe after the surgery, they're doing fine. But then there's also a certain percentage of people that after the surgery they have even more problems.
I was, like I said, in perimenopause and I was having all kinds of issues. And I was going to conventional doctors for answers to what was going on. I knew I was in perimenopause, but what could we do to alleviate or eliminate some of these symptoms? And I kept getting the same response, which was it's perfectly normal for a woman of your age to be experiencing everything that you're experiencing. And I really couldn't accept that as my fate right now. So I ended up going to a functional medicine doctor. And after blood work, she diagnosed me with Hashimoto's disease and
Mm-hmm.
celiac disease. And
Okay.
so it was at that point where I changed my diet, my lifestyle, that my frozen shoulder went away.
Ah, so basically, okay, so here's the thing, because any pain is from inflammation. So
Right.
we agree on that. And so shoulder pain is also another sign of inflammation associated with aging, especially for women going through perimenopause, menopause. Their body's hormone is changing, so they tend to have more inflammation in the body. So anybody aging, including myself, we're having more chronic inflammation when we age. So that's why the idea of preventing aging related pain or any degenerative conditions is to reduce the chronic inflammation. If we can control the chronic inflammation associated with aging, if we can make it minimal so that it doesn't increase to the amount that can cause damage to our body, then that's how we can prevent the degenerative conditions or any pain or any of these things they say, oh, it's just normal, it's aging.
So, what's your advice for lowering inflammation in your body?
So what you said, you went to the functional medicine doctor,
Right.
and then because they found out you have Hashimoto's and celiac, then they gave you probably thyroid
Yeah,
medication. They gave you also they tell you to avoid certain food in your diet because if you have celiac, if you eat gluten, you eat a lot of different food like dairy, all these things can cause more chronic inflammation in the body that your body is already dealing with.
that's exactly what she said. So, what are we missing when we focus only on symptoms instead of the root cause?
So that means if we only focus on symptoms, you will not even address any symptoms until they arise. So then you wait until the symptoms are already here. And it's like you're digging a well when the fire already starts. It's a little bit late, but if it's still in early stage, then you can still do a lot of things, just like your shoulder condition you mentioned. If you started early doing things, then it can resolve itself. But if you don't pay attention, a lot of people, even in the early stage of the shoulder, they don't do anything. They think, oh, it's minor. Because some people, they started out with very minor shoulder pain, not like yours, like you said, you couldn't reach the cup in the cabinet. But some people, they just have some pain when they reach certain things, but it's tolerable. So then they think, oh, it's just minor pain, no problem. Then it developed over time, becoming more and more pain, and the inflammation becomes more and more. And then they still think, oh, maybe I just rest and it will be getting better. But then eventually it becomes really debilitating. They don't have any range of motion. They cannot sleep well because the pain is so bad at night. All these kind of things. Most people, they don't think at early stage of that pain, they should treat it. So that's the difference of doing early prevention versus you wait until your conditions are already so bad. Or there are plenty of people I've seen like they may be treated with conventional treatment like taking painkiller, doing physical therapy, but then after years, eventually their doctor would tell them, oh, you need a shoulder replacement. So by that point, actually there are still ways to treat it so that you don't need to do the shoulder replacement surgery. But a lot of people, they just listen to their doctor and go down that way to do the shoulder replacement.
Yeah.
So of course, for some people after shoulder replacement, they feel fine. But again, in my personal opinion, I think human body is a garden, is not a machine. So you should now just say, okay, let's replace this part and let's replace that part. Even a machine, when you replace the parts in the machine, when like a car, if it's not the original parts, it doesn't work as well, right? So there are many things associated with like you just the mentality that you just want to wait until the last minute, then you treat it, and then you always think your doctor would have a solution to it. Actually, they don't.
Yeah. So give us an idea. Frozen shoulder. How would it be treated in traditional Chinese medicine?
So, for example, in your case, when you all of a sudden one day you had this shoulder problem. At that time, if you do one or two treatment with acupuncture and with a kind of special herbal formula I use, that's a proprietary formula I got from China, and within the months, your pain would be gone. So because you had that very early stage. And of course, at the same time, you need to adjust your diet and do other things to reduce the inflammation in the body, right? So that's the other thing you should still do. But for that particular pain incidence, you couldn't move the shoulder. That, if you do it at that moment when you had that issue that just arose, then actually it would resolve itself in a month.
Wow.
And you don't even need to do very complicated treatments.
Wow, wow. So
That's why even 20 years ago, I wrote 2 articles about frozen shoulder. So that's what I was trying, why I mentioned it, because even though 20 years ago, when I started my clinic, I wanted to teach people about early prevention, about treating the root cause. But I would say maybe only 5% of people listen to what I said.
Yes, but that's changing, I think, now. I think Chinese medicine is definitely becoming more popular, and I believe that probably a lot of people are turning to that, especially if they're discouraged with conventional medicine. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think about true longevity? What does that actually look like beyond just people living longer?
So the true longevity is now just the lifespan, right? So even now on internet and everything, anybody talking about longevity, they would also say you want the health span instead of lifespan, right? In my opinion, I don't believe we can live beyond 120 years old, which is the maximum lifespan already talked about in the ancient book, The Yellow Emperor's Classic in Medicine. And even the modern research has shown that the maximum lifespan for human beings is 120 years old. So in our recorded centenarians or people who live beyond 110 years old, I think the oldest person recorded now have not reached 120 yet. So for me, I'm very interested and I have a deep passion about helping people to live the maximum lifespan they can have, because everybody has different genetic background and everybody has their own unique maximum lifespan they can achieve. But what you can do in your lifetime is to do the right thing to reduce the inflammation, to reduce any practices or conditions that can cause the debilitating degenerative conditions associated with aging. So when you age, say if my lifespan is only to 99 years old, I accept that as a fact. But I know what I can control is I can make my 99 years, the last 20 years, not sitting in the chair, not being able to move, having a lot of pain, having to take 100 different medications to control different things, and then they cause other things when you take these medications, and you have to go through so many surgeries, all these things. That's what we can control, and that's what we can improve in our daily practice to achieve that.
So give us some ideas of what we could do to achieve that.
Okay, so I have 6 principles I wrote in my book. The abridged version just published recently, 2 months ago. And the 6 principles we already talked about in the earlier conversation: early prevention, recognize your body's constitution, treat the root cause, and then tend your body like a garden. So then the 5th and the 6th are you need to address your body's condition with holistic approaches, not just one single magic fix or anything. It doesn't exist. There's no one single magic fix or one single pill as fountain of youth. So you have to combine different things designed particularly to your body's constitution and use them consistently and also, of course, adjust over time when your body changes. That's how you can achieve the maximum optimal health. And then the sixth principle is to follow the nature. So that's very important because our human body is in between the universal energy and the earth energy. So that's why something like walking outside in the morning or in the dusk time and connecting your body to the nature, earthing, meditation, or even just enjoy the nature, going outside for hiking or to do some meditation near the water. So all these things will harmonize your body's energy with the earth and the universal energy. So you need to follow the natural rhythm. So that's not just about connect to the nature. You also need to realize everything in the nature has ebbs and flows. So you don't want to swim against the current when things are not the right moment for you to do certain things. So that not only applies to health, but also to your career, to dealing with anything in the life. So basically, this principle, the last principle, is to help you achieve a very calm mind in any situation in life so that you don't stress your body physically. And then long-term stress physically would be the number one cause of any degenerative conditions.
Wow. I need to start changing my lifestyle and I need to read your book. So we'll
Sure.
have to put the information where we can find your book in the show notes for
Yes.
sure. What are some of the earliest signs that the body gives us that something is out of balance before a disease actually develops? Are there any like telltale signs that we could pick up on that I probably people ignore, little twinge here or there? Is there anything
Yes.
you could
So,
share?
for example, a lot of people, when they get older, they would start having some sleep problems. Like I'm an example too. So,
Me too.
in my younger years, I never had any problem sleeping. I can fall asleep anytime, anywhere, and I don't wake up in the middle of night. But then in the past 2 or 3 years, I would have more incidents of waking up around 3 a.m., 4 a.m. But of course, sometimes you say, oh, it's stress related. But on the other hand, why do you now wake up when you were younger? So it is definitely related to the aging. And then because when we get older, we have less capability to control our hormones or even controlling our sleep mode. So that's the sign that you need to address. You don't want to just say, okay, let me just live like this. So some people, they just deal with it. And then some people, they would say like they have chronic sleep deprivation. So that's very important to address. You don't want to ignore that. That's the early sign of aging. And the other early sign of aging would be aches and pains because
Yeah.
like again, it goes to the chronic inflammation part and your body cannot regenerate as well as when you were younger. So that's how the chronic inflammation accumulates. And when you have this, a lot of people, when they wake up in the morning, they will start feeling aches and pains, even though it's not like a particular joint or anything. It's more like a general aches and pains all over the body.
Yeah, definitely that. So, how could women, especially in midlife or beyond, begin to shift towards a more preventative approach to their health?
So, for example, if you are thinking you're already having some signs of perimenopause or you're already in menopause, so besides doing, if you have a doctor who can help you do hormone replacement, like bioidentical hormone
Yeah.
replacement therapy, not like particular just taking the low dose birth control pill, that's definitely not good. So you definitely need to address your particular hormone panel and then do the bioidentical hormone replacement that will help a lot of symptoms associated with hormone changes in menopause. And also, you can actually use a lot of different food as supplements to help your hormone balance. So for me, I don't do any hormone replacement therapy. I basically use food to help my decline in estrogen.
So what foods do you use for that?
So for women, particularly for estrogen, the following foods are very good for tonifying the female hormone part, like a black sesame in Chinese market. Like you can only, I think you can only get it in Chinese market, and then walnuts, and also goji berry and soy. So soy is like the valen of estrogen labeled by a lot of Western medicine doctors.
Yes.
but in Asian culture, people in Japan, in China, in Korea, we eat a lot of tofu growing up. And actually the rate of breast cancer in all these Asian countries are much, much lower than Western countries because, and there are a lot of studies even from 30 years ago showing what's in soy or tofu that actually helps regulate the estrogen receptors in your body. So it's now that's the other thing about Western medicine. They always want to just pick one thing and then say, this is bad, then don't do it. But they overlook the whole picture because soy as a natural ingredient has many things in it that we don't even know and we haven't even studied. So the main ingredient that can help the estrogen function is called genistein. And the genistein actually can bind to certain, because estrogen receptors on your cells have 3 different kinds. So the genistein actually can bind to certain estrogen receptors that can actually send signals to inhibit the estrogen pathway downstream. So that's why it's not like simply labeled as, say, estrogenic or estrogen stimulating ingredient. It actually has multifaceted regulation. So that is the same concept as if we go to the stem cell part, because the stem cell is not just stimulating your body to grow and repair, it also modulates the immune system on both sides. It makes your overactive immune system not damaging your own body tissue, like Hashimoto's is also autoimmune related. And then on the other side, it also increases your immune function to get rid of the bad cells in your body, because that's your immune system. Another function is to eradicate any malfunctioning cells and pathogens in your body. So if you use Western medicine approach, they would either suppress your immune system if they think you have autoimmune conditions, and then people on immunosuppressive medications, they have a lot of susceptibility to developing infections because their immune system is suppressed.
Yeah.
And if you increase your immune function to combat infections, like the past few years people had COVID-19, then they also increases your body's chance to start developing autoimmune conditions. So it seems Western medicine, they just don't have some kind of moderate ingredient or something to address both sides. It's either one side or the other. They don't have something that can address both sides to moderate, to make it more balanced. So that's why the interacting effect to balance everything out, then that's why a lot of times when you use natural ingredients to treat certain conditions, it's much better than using pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. Do you ever see in the future that we could merge conventional medicine with traditional Chinese medicine and make it work together?
I think for that to happen,
Yeah.
We have to really change our whole medical system
Yes.
because this current medical system we're having now was only set up about 100 years ago by John D. Rockefeller. And before him, before he standardized the pharmaceutical process, the medical school education process, actually a lot of natural therapies are taught in the curriculum in medical schools, say 200 years ago.
Ah,
But of course, back then, you can say we didn't have a lot of advancement in modern medicine.
yeah.
But because John D. Rockefeller set up this system and all these natural therapy, all these concepts are pushed out of the medical education. So that's why we have what we have now. Is basically everything is about one molecule, you extract this ingredient, then you treat this condition. A simple thing would be cholesterol. You just use statin drug to control cholesterol, but then you don't look at other things because cholesterol actually have a lot of other functions that you need,
Yes.
especially when you're in the older ages. And in Chinese medicine, because we always talk about yin and yang balance, the harmony of different systems in the body, so we never just use one single ingredient to address one symptoms. You always have to look the whole body as a garden, and then you have to treat the whole forest instead of one tree.
Yes. So, Dr. Song, if anyone listening here, if they wanted to meet with you and have you be their doctor, do you work virtually at all?
Yes, I do.
You do.
Because right now, I'm not even in Boston all the time because I have my stem cell retreat clinic in Colombia. So I spend half of the time in Colombia and half of the time in Boston. And for what we talked about today, to recognize your body's constitution and to recognize what imbalance your body has so that you can start addressing your early symptoms and start harmonizing the balance in your body of different systems,
Right.
that actually can be done virtually. So I actually have a place where you can go online, not only just pre-ordering the upcoming hardbound book, because what I published recently was the abridged version. You can also request to have a 15-minute complimentary consultation. And then if you want to go deeper after that, then we can have a paid service to go through the whole body system to identify what you need to do to address your particular body
Okay.
conditions.
Now, I would like to put all that information in the show notes, so I will reach out to get all of the links and everything, especially your
Yes,
book as well. Do
yes.
you have any final thoughts you'd like to leave my listeners with?
I would say health is now taken for granted, and we really need to work on our health, on our balance, the balance in our body. And a lot of times, making changes is not that easy because a lot of times people don't want to make the changes because the pain of staying status quo is now bigger than the pain of making the changes.
Yes, absolutely.
I would like people to think things not in your comfort zone, not in what you're so familiar with. We need to think outside of the box. We need to start addressing our symptoms early as possible, even without symptoms. So that's why I always want to teach people about the early prevention, treating the root cause, advocated in Yellow Emperor's Medicine of Classic that was written 6,000 years ago.
Wow.
Because even up till now, these principles still apply, and our society, a big percentage of people are still not following what the saint already talked about 6,000 years ago.
Wow. That's a great way to end this podcast. Dr. Song, thank you so much for being here. This was such an important topic. I loved it. I loved it. So thank you again for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I always love talking about these because I want more people to understand this and start applying to their life to help them live healthier and longer.
I agree. Thank you. This was such a powerful and eye-opening conversation with Dr. Yi Sung. What I loved most about today's discussion is how it invites us to pause and really think about the way we approach our health. Instead of chasing symptoms or looking for the next quick fix, Dr. Yi reminds us that true longevity is built on understanding the body as a whole, honoring its signals, and taking action before disease ever has the chance to take hold. This isn't about doing more. It's about thinking differently. It's about shifting from reaction to prevention, from surface level solutions to deeper, lasting healing. And for so many of us, especially as we move through midlife and beyond, that shift can truly change everything. If this episode resonated with you, I encourage you to share it with a friend or a sister or anyone who's ready to take more empowered approach to their health. As always, if you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and help us spread this message of healing and rejuvenation. Thank you so much for being here with me on Susan LoPresti Wellness, Mind, Body, and Soul. Until the next time, take care of your mind, your body, and your soul. Thank you again for listening.